Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world today. Welcome to our Big Book 12-Step Workshop. My name is Herb. I'm an alcoholic. This call is being recorded. Please join me in prayer for spiritual intervention. God, please set aside everything that I think I know about myself, my brokenness, the 12 steps in you, for an open mind and a new experience of myself, my brokenness, the 12 steps, and especially you. Please join me in the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I may have been a little redundant last time. I'm not quite sure, but there may have been some overlap. At least we can serve it as a review. We looked deeply at the conclusion to the 5th step. We've spent several months actually on the 1st step, several weeks on steps 2 and 3, and then several months again on the 4th step. The 4th step is the first step in writing, one of my friends said, and I think that's a wonderful way to characterize it. The first step is one of experience and memory, but the 4th step it's in writing. The experience and the memory are in writing of our brokenness, that deep woundedness that comes from our basic instincts that are hijacked by our desire to survive and our very, very failed coping strategies for success. And we identify those and we look underneath those at the exact nature, and then we talk about them in the 5th step. There's no right or wrong way to do the 5th step. Although somebody once said, tongue-in-cheek, the only thing that you can do wrong about the 5th step is not do it. My very first 5th step was very lame by my measurement after that, after I knew what I was doing. But I did the best I could. I wrote an autobiography and I read it. I didn't change. 4 years later, I did the steps out of the book as you have been introduced to it today or previously through this workshop and or other work that you've done with a sponsor or step guides. And we get to the underlying causes and condition. And Bill says it very clearly on page 62, but it's such a simple statement. It doesn't have any flesh on it. It doesn't have any technicolor. It's black and white. Selfishness dash self-centeredness exclamation point. He says, page 62, that's the root. That's the cause. That's the exact nature. And we looked at resentment and we looked at fear and we looked at our dishonesty, especially in our unhealthy sexual experiences, to see that dishonesty and going down to the root cause, getting what we want. Self-will run riot. In fact, he says, extreme example of self-will run riot. And then we do the best we can to reveal it to somebody who will listen and witness to it. Not as a therapist, not as a confessor to forgive us, not as a friend even to support or condone us. No, just as a witness. If the person hearing the 5th step does nothing but hear the 5th step I believe that's followed the spiritual intent of what the big book describes on pages 72 to 75. Those promises I read on page 75, they're a wonderful meditation. At different times in your journey, you might want to take a look at the promises on page 63 for the third step promises as a meditation. The promises on page 75 as a wonderful meditation. They're indicative and they're filled, because they're so dense, with information and potential insight and experience. At the end of that fifth step, I suggested that you have a period of 1 hour meditation, asking some questions, and Bill talks about the architectural components of building that spiritual arch through which we walk to a new freedom. On page 76, he reviewed the very slim suggestions with regard to sixth step. One paragraph, willingness. If we can answer these questions to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6. So the meditation is the conclusion of the fifth step. I have the people call me the very next day to get the assignment for step 6 and 7 together. And I recommend that they not spend much more than a couple hours on step 6 and 7. Willingness is the key. Are we now ready to let God remove from us the things which we have admitted are objectionable? The implication is that we can name it, we can talk about it, we just can't do anything about it. We can't remove it. It's an implication here, which is confirmed by step 7. Of course, it's a prayer. And I love the way the prayer starts, my Creator. I've probably mentioned that before in some of our dialogue because I'm so impressed with the way Bill has structured this step process like an organic hand in glove. We're powerless over our character defects. I mean, we got introduced to that in step 4, didn't we? Powerless over resentment, so we had a prayer. Powerless over fear, so we had a prayer. Powerless over our dishonesty and our sex behavior, so we have a prayer. To know what to do and then the power to do it. So he's very consistent throughout the big book. In fact, think about step 11. How it ends. Praying for the knowledge, praying for the power. And here he is saying, we need to know what our character defects are. Now, he doesn't say this, but I think it's implied that we make a list of our character defects so that we can be very aware of what they are that we're asking to be removed and willing to have them removed. And I thought I was. This is a line, however, that fortunately I had underlined and discussed with my step guide so that at the appropriate time it was brought back into my consciousness. If we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. I had no idea that I clung to anything because when I finished my list of character defects, there was nothing there. I was clear in my consciousness at that time. On that Saturday morning, there was nothing that I wanted to see as an asset. They were all liabilities, and I wanted to be changed, and I wanted to be a decent human being. I wanted them removed, and I spent some time on Sunday looking at and reviewing the second paragraph, the prayer, and he had mentioned for me to write my own 7-step prayer again, like we did with the third step, not to improve it, but to understand it, my Creator. In that meditation, as I was rewriting it, that's when it dawned on me the appropriateness. If this is my Creator, I've been built with these defects, and therefore I'm going back to the original Creator, the author, to rewrite the script, to remanufacture, to fix the problems in my structure. But notice the prayer is not about making me feel good, making me feel better, having me be a decent person. No, none of those words are there. Because it's, again, the prayer is not about me. Listen to the words. Oh my God, it's so clear here once you study it. Remove the character defects that stand in your way, not my way, that stand in your way of allowing me to be a channel of grace, a channel of life, a channel of helpfulness in the world around me. He uses the term usefulness to you and my fellows. That last line of the 7-step prayer invites me to pray this prayer at the end of my morning practice. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. What a great launching pad for every morning. I pray that prayer at the conclusion of my meditation period. Maybe other times throughout the day as I'm conscious or as I'm quiet, but clearly every day in the morning as a springboard for my activities. I've sat in prayer and meditation. I've sat in the set aside. I've sat in the 3rd step prayer. I've done the guidance. I've listened to the guidance. I've reviewed my day and what the plans are. My goal is to be in alignment. That's the word. It's not in the big book again, but it's the word I use for the 3rd step. It's the word I use for my life. This is my radar sweep. Am I in alignment or not with reality? As I go out from here to do your bidding. I prayed the prayer. And I woke up Monday morning very aware that my major character defect was still there, dominating my thoughts, dominating my emotions, dominating my intended behavior for the day, despite the fact that it was something I had made a decision and a commitment not to do. I was really disappointed. I'm not sure what I was expecting. It was the first time through the work. I think I was expecting total freedom. And I was aware of it and disturbed by it for the week until I came to my men's stag on Thursday night. And it's a meeting that was started by the step guide a year earlier, and that I had attended at his requirement on a weekly basis, a men's stag crosstalk meeting. They were there to work the steps and hold each other accountable for working those steps. And a man shared about the 7th step, coincidentally enough, that night. And he shared that he prayed specifically for the removal of a specific character defect. Well, I knew from study of the big book, from the instructions of my step guide, from the reading and understanding of the 12 and 12, that none of that was an instruction in the big book or the 12 and 12, nor of the practice of the step guides in the room. He prayed specifically for the removal of a specific character defect. So I thought, well, I took a couple of days. I thought about it. On Saturday, I went into my bedroom and I shut the door because I was going to go in there, get on my knees to pray specifically for the removal of this specific character defect. Now, I said get on my knees. That might be the first time I've said that. This man who was my step guide believed in getting on your knees to pray. And he said to me, not to get God's attention, but to get his attention. He was the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, a very bright, a very successful, a very driven man, a very proud man. So he got on his knees as an act of humility. He got on his knees as an act of subordination. He got on his knees as an act of supplication, not to get God's attention, but to get his attention. And I followed suit. I got on my knees and I got myself very centered. And I was going to pray the prayer from the big book, the 7-step prayer on page 76, specifically for the removal of this specific character defect, and I had to stop. Because I realized at that moment, shocked, that I wasn't willing at all. When it got to specificity, in general terms, I had already prayed the prayer on the prior Sunday. But when it came to the specificity of this particular deviation, I just stopped. I froze, consciously aware that I wasn't willing at all. But I remembered that line that I emphasized as I was opening our conversation today. If we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. So then I decided to pray for the willingness to be willing. And I realized that I wasn't even willing to pray for the willingness, but I was willing to be willing to be willing. It was remote. And I did pray specifically. It was a startling and embarrassing awareness, but then I called my step guide and I shared with him this phenomenal insight and experience. And he listened patiently. And then he said to me at the end of that, "That's wonderful, Herb. What a great insight. You weren't willing when you got specific. You discovered that. And then you prayed for willingness like the big book suggests. Now stop the behavior." I immediately understood what he was saying. I don't know why, but it was patently clear to me. I was powerless over the character defect, but 100% responsible for my behavior, how it manifests. And I related that to him, and he supported that distinction. I am powerless over the nature of my character defect, but I am 100% responsible for how it manifests in my consciousness and my emotions, and especially how my feet move. And so he said to me, this is how we're going to work, because he'd had the same experience. You see, that's the benefit of dealing with somebody with practical experience, not just knowledge of the book, not just a practice of an interpretation of the book, but an actual experience with the book from his own personal life. He'd had the same family connection, the same family values about marriage and fidelity, the same background in Catholicism, the same background in alcoholism, the same background in business, the same background in so many different areas that I could relate to. He was able to share with me his experience, not just his opinion or his knowledge, but his actual experience, which made it obviously totally credible. He said, I want you to pray each day because you're powerless. And I want you to call me each day because you're human, and you will establish a habit of accountability, transparent accountability. And I began that, praying each day, calling him each day. Well, it didn't take long, 48 hours maximum. It might have been quicker than that, but it was 30 years ago plus. Within 48 hours, the behavior stopped, and it's never returned. The behavior never returned. The temptation, any series, never returned. The thought, the memory, the fantasy, the inclination stayed with me for 2 years. I continued to pray each day. Eventually, we agreed that I would call him once a week to be accountable because the behavior had changed, which was the critical part. And after about 2 years, the inclination went away. And I'm spending this much time on it. I'm convinced I didn't do this before. And if I did, it's worth saying again. Because it's life-changing. I mean, it changed my life. And the formula is so simple. If you want to change, pray specifically to a power other than yourself for intervention, and hold yourself transparently accountable to a human being on a regular basis. Now, I needed daily because it was the kind of character defect that was going to undermine my personal life and my professional life and my program. It's very clear on page 70, if this behavior continues, infidelity, you will drink again. Now, I was convinced that that was true because that was this man's experience, actually. And after the behavior changed, I began to, I continued to pray each day for the removal of the inclination and talk to this step guide specifically about my memories, my fantasies, my inclination. And after about 2 years, as I say, it went away. If you want to change, big if. Pray specifically and engage an accountability partner. It doesn't need to be your sponsor. It doesn't need to be a step guide. It doesn't even need to be somebody in a program. It could be a therapist. It could be a spiritual director. It could be a priest or minister or rabbi. It could be the best friend. It could be your partner in terms of your intimacy partner. Just somebody other than you that you talk to transparently, honestly. What I have noticed from people who hear this and practice it is that they get free. And those that don't, that ever report back to me, indicate that they stopped either praying or holding themselves accountable, mostly about the accountability part. Praying is the easy part. Accountability is the hard part, because our ego's involved, of course. And that might be the benefit of the power of it. As I say, spend a couple, 3 hours on step 6 and 7. Not much more, because in fact, bottom line, there's nothing that we can do about it except begin to change our behavior, and even that's a struggle. Then move on to step 8. That's what Bill does. Now we need more action, without which we find that faith without works is dead. Let's look at steps 8 and 9. Now, this is the only time that he does this, looks at 2 steps at once. I don't see any real need to do that, but that's what he did. I mean, the steps are totally different. Step 8 is inventory. Step 9 is action. Just like step 4 is inventory, step 5 is action. Step 6 is inventory. Step 7 is action. Step 8 is inventory. Step 9 is action. I could continue that. Step 10 is inventory. Now, steps 11 and 12 are a combination of inventory and action. Make a list that says, this is an inventory of the people harmed. Well, if you've done the work as I've suggested it, at least in the column 4 of the resentment inventory, you have 2 questions in column 4 that treat harm. We said they were parking spots, and we didn't pay much attention other than noting that there might be something to pay attention to later on. This is the later on. We can go through our memory and list the people that we've harmed. If you've never done this, this is a pretty easy exercise, because there will be immediate memories of people that have been hurt by your behavior, not by your thoughts, not by your resentments. There's not necessarily any harm done by a resentment. And there may be harm done where there's no resentment. And we'll talk more about that as we get specifically into step 8. I'm just touching it on the surface right now to give you the beginning of the exercise. We have a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. Those are 2 different actions. So this is about scratch paper. I'm not interested in you doing anything formally yet. I'll talk about that next week. But just on scratch paper, begin making a list from a brain dump, from a heart dump, from a gut dump, people that you've harmed. I'll help you shape it. I'll help you structure it mechanically. You can take a look even in the Way of Life document. On page 36, I use the word diminish. Harm can somehow, it blocked me. It's such a violent word from my standpoint. It might not be for you, but for me, it connoted violence, and it blocked me from actually getting underneath and deter. So I used an alternative word, diminish. Whose life quality did I diminish? That broadens this catch net for me. Don't pay much attention to the balance of the questions at this point. Once we get into step 8, I'll go over the structure and the mechanical parts. But I thought I would give you at least the beginnings of an opening to step 8. He says here on page 76, we have a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. We made it when we took inventory. That's the reason that I have that question in column 4. Now, there may be other names in the fear inventory. There weren't many or any in mine, as I recall, but in the sex inventory, clearly there were lots of people. Almost every one of the people in my sex inventory made my 8-step list of harms. We subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. That's where I stop in step 8 here, because Bill then begins to talk about step 9. I'll make that distinction. I think I've asked you, and if I haven't, I'm asking you now to read this material, pages 76 to 83, from the perspective of step 8, not of step 9, making amends. That's a different assignment. Right now, we're just making a list. That's why I say steps 8 and 9 are very distinct. 8 is a list, 9 is action. And so I want you to read that material, page 76 to 83, from the perspective of creating the list. So he has very specific references to different kinds of harms: criminal behavior, marital problems, money problems. And so just that will be a stimulus for you to think about the kinds of harms that might be appropriate. But what I want to stress right now are 2 areas, page 76 and 79. In the, I'm not sure what paragraph it is. It's probably the 3rd paragraph. At the end of that 3rd paragraph, there's in italics in that last line. It says, remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol, for victory over our addiction. It's in italics. This is the Big Book's way of highlighting. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning. When did we agree to that? I'm a Big Book fundamentalist and literalist, and I'm going to say, if Bill is asking us to remember, I am trying to rack my brain now, at least when I did this the first time. Well, when did he make that suggestion that I would be willing to go to any length for victory over alcohol? Remember, that was one of the very first questions that we asked you to ask yourself at the beginning of the workshop. Are you willing to go to any length, and what does that mean? And many of you will remember, some of you won't, that the answer to that question, and now the answer to the question, well, what does it mean? Remember, it was agreed at the beginning to go to any length for victory. He said on page 58, if you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, this is the preface to step 3, then you are ready to take certain steps. And he calls that, this is just a beginning. But notice here on page 76, he says, for any links for victory over alcohol. So he's referring to the first half of the first step, the part before the dash. On page 79, he has almost the same words in that first full paragraph, the third line, reminding ourselves that we have decided to go to any length, same words, but with a very different ending to the sentence. Reminding ourselves that we have decided to go to any length to find a spiritual experience. Oh, we're talking now about the second half of the first step, unmanageability. We ask, anytime the book suggests talking to God, that's a prayer. We ask that we be given strength and direction. Again, as I mentioned to you in the 11-step prayer, strength and direction, knowledge and power to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences may be. So this is the invitation to be rigorously honest. He goes on to say in that paragraph, we may lose our position or reputation or face jail, but we are willing, we have to be, we must not shrink or anything else, because in fact, we're talking about life and death. We're not talking about nice to do, we're talking about need to do. We're not talking about a quality of life, we're talking about the very life itself. So more about step 8 next week. In steps 6 and 7, there's a lot of material in the Way of Life document. Some of it's from the big book, some of it's not. There's a list of character defects that I've put there just to help people as a prompter from the Enneagram. And that's a personality study in psychology. I find it helpful because its orientation is about the shadow self. It's not an official list. It's just my list from my readings and study of the Enneagram. But many people in the workshop had difficult time identifying actual character defects. And so I offer this not as a a challenge to you, but just merely a list or to prompt you to take a look at. In other words, some people might think, well, procrastination's on there. I didn't know that was a character defect. Well, it may or may not be in your case. What does it mean, procrastination? It's a form of fear, of course. I also have a description, which I've referred to before, of the narcissistic personality disorder. I find there's a parallel between that and the way Bill describes unmanageability, selfishness, and self-centeredness. Not everybody here on the call has a character defect of a personality disorder. I don't mean to imply that at all. As you know, it's part of my own personal dysfunction, and therefore I'm somewhat attached to it. Sick sense of humor. And then in order to help people have that turnaround that we had in the 4th step, resentment, especially column 3 and column 4, I've created something that you're familiar with as a structure from the fear inventory, where we looked at what would be the opposite of the fear. And so I've structured another tool that will help us have a turnaround with regard to, if I have this character defect of procrastination, what would be the virtue that I would have, and how would that manifest? Well, it would mean that I would plan my work, and I would have specificity with regard to dates, and I would follow my calendar rather than delay it for some reason, usually not a very good reason. But as you can see, step 7 is very, very, very short. Shortcomings. Powerless to remove them, pray for their removal. You'll notice on In the Way of Life document on step 6, I used the term from the step itself, defects of character. And I've mentioned this before, I think, but it's good to remind ourselves here that defects of character and shortcomings, at least from Bill Wilson's standpoint, are the same. He said, I was taught in English language to use different words in consecutive sentences. Those are synonyms. There's no difference between a defect of character and shortcomings. I've read many treatises and I've participated in lots of discussions in meetings about the differences, and some of them have been productive, but all of them have been not necessary, based on at least Bill's own interpretation of his words. All right. So let's talk to some folks.
It's very interesting to me how different the list of character defects is from when I've done it before in earlier sobriety and, at a younger age. And I was not happy to see on the Enneagram 1, boom, 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 boom.
So you identified with that particular designation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not how I see myself, but after doing all your charts and this work, and especially I have to say, I did another sex inventory page came to the front of my memory that really showed a number 1. And it didn't have to do with having an affair or anything. It had to do when I kept miscarrying and I was determined to get pregnant. And I manipulated the hell out of my husband, used him. And it was literally, and I wrote it down, self-will run riot, because it was like a riot, desperation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so all of it, stubborn, judgmental, critical, dishonest, intolerant, obsessive, impatient, manipulation, like it was all just in that section 1 Enneagram.
Yeah.
It's not the soft person I thought I was. I thought before it was like boundaries, self-esteem, victimhood.
Just a couple notes, because many people are not too familiar or familiar at all with the Enneagram. It's a theory of personality. It's been fairly well validated. It's one of the best ones that I've come across. The benefit that I have is not to find your number, although that's helpful. And there's no right or wrong number. There's no better or worse number. They're just objective evaluations of your personality style, the way you perceive and process information and reality. And there's 3 levels of perception. Through the head, that would be numbers 5, 6, and 7. Through the heart, numbers 2, 3, and 4. And through the gut, numbers 8, 9, and 1. And those are the ways of people perceiving. Fear-based, shame-based, anger-based. All right. Now, do you need to know more about it? No. The whole point of it is the list to promote an experience. Oh my God. Yeah. You don't have to find yourself, but if it's helpful to find some character defects that you didn't know were character defects, then it serves its purpose.
Oh yeah. Well, I remember when I was, new in AA years ago, and my whole, 4th step was about, or 7th, 6, 7 was about not being able to speak up for myself, not having boundaries, being a victim. And you know what? It was all to manipulate. So I really thank you for letting us go deeper and letting me go deeper. And it's been great reading it out loud. And I am absolutely willing, without any reservation, to let go of this stuff in my life.
Yeah.
I'm at that stage. My son is grown. I'm, I don't have.
Some people ask, well, should I begin praying for all of them to be removed? Then my personal experience is one at a time is probably better. To focus on not that your power of prayer will remove it, but your power of prayer will make you conscious of the behavior that's attached to it. And then you get to make an effort to change the behavior in prayer and accountability. And as you begin to change your behavior, then in fact, you begin to rewire your habits. That's the whole point of it.
Yeah. So what would you call being invested in an outcome?
Controlling.
Rigid, controlling. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. One would go with rigid. That's a pretty good word for one. Yep. Yep.
Yep. So I think I feel.
And the perfectionist. Yep.
Hey.
Yep. Yep. And see, that was another insight that I got from the study of the Enneagram, which was such a gift. I used to think people were better than or worse than me. I would judge them based on me because I'm the criterion of reality. Well, then I go, as I learned this, it's like, oh man, they're not wrong, better than or less than. They're just different. They literally are. You are hardwired to see reality different than I am. That's it. Just different, not better than, not worse than. It was huge for me to make that association.
Yes. So therefore, I can just one incident at a time practice listening to somebody else's interpretation. So.
Well, and I'm glad you said it that way. Listen to somebody else's interpretation. What can I learn from the way they perceive reality? Yeah.
Yeah, because you just said the head, the gut, the heart, and so maybe they're not. Okay, that's it. I think.
Well, you see, and I'm going to tie it back into the fourth step because Bill says instincts gone awry, and I use the biological survival instincts of fight, flight, and freeze. Well, fight is the anger from the gut. All right. Flight is the fear from the head. And it was more difficult for me to get in touch with the freeze part, the camouflage part, the dishonesty part. And one of a psychologist who has made a big study of this, she used the term shame. And at first I didn't think of shame as an emotion, but now I'm convinced that that is the emotion, and that's the dominant emotion of a person who comes from the heart space.
Wow.
I know. Okay. Yeah. So you can get the relevance of that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I was listening to her third and fourth column resentments. She's doing your work. And there was a lot. It was her first time doing it. So there was a lot. And then when she got to the end, she said, well, I have just 3 more. And I go, oh, okay. And she goes, well, they're you.
Oh.
And I thought she was joking. I've never had a sponsee that didn't get pissed off at me and blame me for their entire life. I mean, that's part of it, but that wasn't the surprising part, but it just hit me like that was a sideways way to say it. Why didn't she bring it up with me before? And what I'm going to sit here for half an hour and listen to pages. So I just said, no, I think you better read that to somebody else. I mean,
you
we
know what?
laughed.
I think that was probably pretty decent advice since you hadn't been prepared for it. So nice going, actually. A very healthy very healthy response.
This is what I told myself. I said, you're not a very good sponsor. You should be able to. And I went, I am not a professional. How am I going to be open-minded sitting there for half?
Right. Right.
My question is if you ever had, I mean, do your sponsees read their resentments about you too? Yes, they do.
Yeah. I've had that. It's not a frequent occurrence, but I would say 10% of the time they would be honest enough to put me on the list and do something with me. They don't prepare me for that, but they weave it into the whole flow of their resentments. And but we've probably had because I usually don't hear fifth steps of people that I don't take through the steps. So we've already built a relationship, and there's
Yes.
probably been some acknowledgement of some tension between us in the history of doing the work of the fourth step. So it doesn't come to me as a surprise. But I think that was a very healthy, rather than take the risk of sitting there and either doing something silly
Yeah.
hurtful, or just being too tense yourself and ruining the experience for the other person, for you to say, yeah, I don't think so. Once you take that to somebody else, I think it was a very healthy response.
Good. Well, thank you. Well, my question is now, I mean, this is a pretty long time sponsee. We have a nice relationship, is good.
Yeah.
Would you suggest at this point that I circle back on that and say, you know, I've thought about that? Because she was going, I would love to listen to somebody talk about my resentments, different personality types. She's a 1, I'm a 9.
Oh yeah, all right. But if in fact you mean it, if you really mean it, that you would in fact, probably not relish it, but you'd be okay with it, number one, so that she can feel heard in this area.
Yeah.
But number two, so that you might learn something about the way you're perceived, not to take responsibility for it, but meaning her problems with it, but to see if in fact there's any adjustment that you want to make in the way you are perceived.
Okay. I think I could do that. I mean, you know,
I'm confident you can do it if you want to do it, but it really be honest with yourself, and don't do it because, quote, you should do it.
Right. Okay, I'll think about it. I had her, I said, well, you know, she has another sponsor for her food, you know, maybe read it to her. And she did right away. I mean, it's a great
Sure.
sponsee.
Yeah.
But I'll think about that. That's kind of PhD work right there, huh?
Well, maybe, yeah, that's great. Yeah, but I've
Just
never
imagine doing that with my sponsor.
I'm glad you brought it up, because it's real life. That's real life, and I don't believe I've ever had the discussion with anybody. Mm-hmm.
It felt like super real, and it's kind of nice it happened with this particular girl, because I mean, it was fine. It's just like, what?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll think about that.
Yeah. I intentionally did not review with my sponsor some of the areas that I had disturbances about or secrets about, because they did impact him. And to this day, he has no idea about that, because it wasn't necessary for him to know it, but it was necessary for me to go to then somebody else to lay
Yes.
it out.
Well, I would question why, if I have a bunch of my sponsor's been so sweet and stuff, why I would question why I would have the need to say that to her. So
Yeah.
my longtime sponsor. So I kind of question why a person would, I don't know what I think. Work it out yourself. I don't know what I think.
The persons who have come to me in their fifth step, and that 10% that in fact they're kind of embarrassed, they're very ill at ease about it, but they know that I've stressed transparency and no secrets, so they say, well, I have one on you, and so, but we've built a relationship so that they know that I want to hear those kinds of things. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for your feedback.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the question. But again, don't feel an obligation and don't feel any should. Your reaction, I think, was very healthy, because you took care of yourself and you took care of the sacredness of the moment at the same time.
Yeah. Well, thank you, because I was really second guessing myself. Like, why didn't I just listen? But
Yeah. Well, because you weren't prepared for it, and so you paused and took the high road.
Oh, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. I probably will end up asking her if she wants to read it to me.
Mhm.
But thank you.
Yeah, she will want to, but go into prayer, and if you need to talk about it with your own sponsor beforehand, that's fine. But mostly in prayer, and come to your own honest conclusion, and then take whatever action you feel is you're being led to.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
So I took, I just said my son comments about the past, diagnosed with PTSD as a result of it. And so his comments will come every now and then in regards to, well, mom, just kind of blaming me in a way. And I've taken it on all the time. And I've been pretty passive with it all this time. And so he's 31. And I, like you said earlier, I'm not responsible for his healing. But I definitely, feel hard about it, but there's not much I can do. But what I do want to do is to be able to stop this. And so what am I defending?
Wait, stop what?
Feeling a victim each time that these comments come up.
Okay, feeling a negative feeling, in other words. Yeah. All right. So he says what he says, and all you do is absorb it and feel bad.
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah. I'm number 9.
Yeah, that's what a number 9 would do. That's right. In contrast to a number 8 that would then bring out a harpoon and spear him.
Yeah. Sometimes I wish I had one. It would really shock that.
You wouldn't use it.
Yeah. So what am I defending? So am I defending myself? Am I defending my past? Am I giving excuses? Like I'm not doing anything. So what am I defending?
Oh, you're defending something by not reacting.
Right. Okay, so because I'm not reacting, I'm defending something.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So I just put down my past.
Well, actually, not because you're not reacting, but because, in fact, you're feeling badly.
Because I'm feeling what?
Badly.
Okay.
Yeah, you're taking it on as if it's your fault.
I take it on all the time, and I don't know how to shake this off.
Yes.
So the answer to what am I defending? I'm defending what? My ego,
There's no right answer. There's whatever your answer is going to be. And you might have to do this worksheet several times with different words to kind of come up with it. But I can't help you come up with the right answer because there's no right answer. There's just your answer. What is it in you that feels attacked? And so like
my being, my motherhood, my parenting, my that I wasn't there for him. I'm still carrying that.
So there's some guilt and shame.
Yep.
Yeah. And so you're defending your past.
Yeah, I did write that down.
And it might be that, in fact, you weren't the ideal mother, that you did make mistakes, that because of maybe addiction or other circumstances, that you didn't give the kind of attention. And have you ever made amends to him?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I was thinking about that and I thought, early on recovery and whatnot, I may need to make amend again.
Oh, maybe not, but but go ahead with your thoughts. But I'm just sort of, I'm real cautious about doubling up on amends because that may or may not be the case depending on how legitimate and healthy your original amends were. Making another amends is just, again, your act of guilt to try to change his perception.
Mm-hmm. And it's quite a while ago, and what comes to me is that it may not have been genuine, just kind of young in program, and I don't know, I didn't do the steps until I was 5 years in program, and then I didn't really, I don't want to say not do it right, but I did what was given me, and I did
the best you could at the time, but it may not have been adequate. It may not have been. So wait until we finished our discussion about 8 and 9 to evaluate what you did in the past and whether there's something that needs to be done now. And it's possible that another interaction would be healthy and restorative, rehabilitative to the relationship. But let me tell you something about my personal history again, and that is, as I've been quite honest, I had a history of infidelity, and part of the amends was a commitment to fidelity. And she was willing to work with me on that in the healing process. I'll talk more about that when we get to the 9th step. A very powerful experience, but it took 5 years for her to trust me and to release me from my history. And I knew that she was getting ready toward the end of the 5 years. My own sponsor, Step Guide, had the same experience and had counseled me to use the 5 years as kind of a litmus test and sort of a boundary. And right around and Mary and I had discussed that you know, I'm open to hearing your feedback and your anger, etc. For a while, but at some point we're going to have to move on. And right around the 5-year period, she made some type of a sarcastic remark, spontaneous. She wasn't an unkind person, so it wasn't a normal thing, but it was, again, connecting to the old history, the old story, the old hurt. And I said, Mary, if you can't let that go and stop this criticism, we will have to separate. All right. It's been 5 years now. I'm a different man. She heard me and she let it go. So I had to draw a line in the sand at some point. But we'll talk more about that when we get to the 8th and 9th step.
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm feeling right now. Like after doing this work,
Yeah.
It's like I am ready to kind of stand up for myself and not be walked on anymore. Like I've allowed it all.
And it's especially valid for mothers and children, because children will take advantage of it. They don't necessarily have a program. And every once in a while when they get mad, they'll strike out just because that's human nature. And at some point, you have to say, that's not all right. Yes, I made some mistakes. Yes, I could have been a much better mother. Yes, all of that's true. But I've changed now and I've made amends to you, and you're not entitled to bring that up ever again. Oh, how's that?
Yeah. See, I've always said to my counselor, I says, I need to know what words to say. Like
Yes.
I need to learn.
Yes.
I need to unlearn what I've been doing. And I need to learn, like you say,
Yes.
when you said, it's not all right, to do this. It's time
That's
to stop.
right.
I'm writing this down because I don't have these words.
Yes, and we will be going over this in detail in the 8th and 9th step. And quite frankly, as part of the 8th step, I help people prepare by even role playing with them in conversations with wives and brothers and mothers and etc. Yep.
So I'm kind of feeling like I want to do this now, but what I'm hearing you say
Oh,
is no. Yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
you're
Yeah.
not ready yet.
Okay.
I mean, you're really getting ready. You're in the batter's box.
Okay. No batting yet.
No batting yet. Yeah.
First base. Okay. That's great. That's really helpful because I really feel like I want to say something.
Yes.
And so I'm just kind of like, can I just kind of say, that's not all right? Or do I just leave it?
Not yet. Hey,
Okay.
within a week or two, we'll be having this discussion as a focus thing. Right now, that's a bit beyond what we've covered.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I hear you.
You've waited this long. You can wait another 2 weeks.
That's great. Yeah. Because this is important. And I do want that relationship. And I do believe in this in this process. I do believe in the big book. So when it says
Good.
neutrality on step 9, I think also for me, it's neutrality with my relationships that I have.
That's correct, actually.
You know,
Very nice, very nice, yeah. And
Yeah.
this is steps 8 and 9 are the most sacred because the healing is miraculous that happens. And I don't normally talk like that. The healing in steps 8 and 9 is miraculous.
And I've never really found that with steps 8 and 9. So I'm not going to have any expectations, but that is my desire and want. You
Beautiful.
know,
Wonderfully put. Wonderfully put. It's not my expectation, but it certainly is my hope.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Thanks.
Good. You're doing some great work, and I think you'll have a really good outcome from all of this work for yourself. It
Yeah.
might not change your son, but I'll bet you it will change the way he does, in fact, treat you.
Yeah.
I'd like to do a character defect worksheet on taking things personally.
All right. And so you see that as a character defect, that you take things personally.
Yes, and boy, all the things we've shared today has been so helpful on that too.
Yeah, wonderful. All right. And so when you have that as a character defect in the first column, how do you behave? Second column.
I mentally obsess about what they said, making it about me and what I did wrong, or they are saying this to tell me what I'm doing wrong.
And how do you behave then?
How do I behave?
No,
How do I behave when
No, what are you defending? I'm sorry.
okay.
Number,
Okay, what am I defending?
yeah.
3. That I did something wrong and they are right and know more than me.
Yeah. So, and yeah, all right. And if in fact, what virtue or strength would you have if in fact you didn't react this way?
The opposite, number 4.
Please.
It's not about me. I didn't do anything wrong unless what they said is valid. And I can talk to them about it if they were talking about me or what they're saying is about them because it's coming from them. They are talking about themselves, listening to where they are.
Wow. That's a tremendous psychological insight on your part, and you can hold that. The word I wrote down is the virtue would be self-confidence.
Ah,
Hmm.
thank you. Yes,
well,
then I wouldn't.
Your self-confidence, that's how you would react, right?
Yes, and I wouldn't take it personally and to begin with.
You would explore whether you should take it personally. I mean, you said that. I would sit down with them and say, tell me a little bit more about that so that we can evaluate it. I don't want to be like that. I don't think I am, but you're perceiving it that way. Let's discuss it. A self-confident person wouldn't be defensive. They would go, oh, interesting observation. I don't think it's true, but let's talk about it because I want to learn.
Ah, I love that. Yes, that's good. That's good. Talk about it. Mm.
Well, essentially, that's what you said in that whole 1 or 2 sentences that you gave me, which was quite insightful, actually. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And or also too, I don't know what it is. I've mentioned this to you before, that I can take whatever anybody says sometimes and make it, and make it about me. It's like I'm quick to take it on. And if I have that, I'm thinking the self-confidence you're talking about, then I wouldn't be so quick to take that on.
Yeah, the self-confidence would be a manifestation of a better, healthy self-esteem. Yes.
Mm.
That in fact, I hear negative things said by other people. I'm confident enough that I can look at it and go, yeah, no, that's not me. But I have to have self-esteem in order to be able to do that.
Ah, yes. And would that be also accepting myself? You know, I'm practicing that more, being accepting of myself.
You bet. You bet. In fact, they may have seen a manifestation of a deficiency in you, and you go, yeah, you know, I really am insensitive to people, and I'm really working on that. Thank you for bringing it to my attention.
Oh, lovely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Can I do one more?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the next one is judgmentalness. And my behavior, thinking about them in my head in a negative way. And at times, something that I'm thinking will come out of my mouth to them. And then three, what am I defending? I'm feeling not enough, needing to put myself in a one-up to feel a false sense of feeling good about myself.
Yeah, yeah. See, you've got a wonderful sense of psychology. Both of your comments are very insightful. That first one was talking about the awareness of their projection, and this is an awareness of my coping strategy of superiority in order not to feel inferior. Yeah, yeah. And then how would you behave?
Being loving and accepting, listening to where others are. And I say that was 4. And then 5, being loving and accepting with my thoughts and words.
Yeah, and all right, so I think very definitely you've cracked the code on that turnaround, quite frankly. Those two examples are probably, I mean, what was your experience in writing those out that way?
Really seeing clearly why I'm doing these things, and how I can change that behavior. And I love what you shared about when I start practicing. That's what I was thinking. I'm powerless over a defect of character. I can ask God to remove it, but I can start practicing a new behavior to help it diminish. Yeah. Is that right, what I heard you say?
Yeah,
okay.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah. And in the judgmentalness, this isn't the thought, but it's now come to me as an additional thought, where we have the lens through which we're looking is, how can I help? How can I help in this situation for it to be at least pleasant, for instance, or how can I help them in some way? But when I come at wherever I'm at with the attitude of how can I help, it changes my attitude and it changes the environment. Now, I'm a particularly, so it might not be true. I'm just challenging myself by some of the things that were said today. There may be people who are more oriented toward enabling and codependence, and that might not be the proper lens through which to look initially anyway, if you're trying to overcome that.
Yes. Okay. Yes. And I like what you said. So taking one defect of character at a time to ask for it to be removed, and then start practicing that behavior, and then working on that, focusing on that one at a time. Is that what you said too?
I did, yes. And it depends on the severity of it and the relevance of it. It may be that you could do one a day, or you could do one a week, or you could do one a month, depending on, I had to get to this one because it was so serious. And then the rest of them, I could deal with on a more scheduled basis, if you will. Yeah.
Thank you. You've always been so helpful. Thank you.
I've had I've had just lots of good experiences with resentments. I mean, resentments I've carried for a long time and thought, well, I'll never really get over them. And I bring them up again and I see they're gone. I had a resentment against my dad, and now my dad's my hero.
Well, isn't that just such a healing, such a wonderful experience? Great.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's amazing. And but as I'm listening to others, I'm realizing that I'm carrying some grudges. I thought, okay, I'm finished with this person. I'm fine, no problems. But this person just keeps haunting me all the time. So I know I'm going to be doing a fourth step, and on continuing to do that on her. I've really had a problem with this friendship over the years. So
Yep.
I'll be a little more prepared to talk about that hopefully next time. But I just, the growth that's occurred when I feel like I'm lazy, maybe not doing the work that I should be doing. I know you say don't say should, and that's okay. So I'll get rid of that word. But that just the changes that I'm seeing in myself, encouraged to do things that I hadn't done before. I'm getting much better about not procrastinating things. I took myself on a 10-hour drive to North Carolina by myself a few days ago, a week ago, and back, and just doing a whole lot of things that I normally wouldn't do. And I'm thinking, where's this coming from? But I know it's coming from here, coming from.
That's great. Yes. Who is this person I'm living inside of?
That's right. I know. It's true. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and there's more, and there's more. And, just on the face of it, anybody who's on this call is not lazy. Lazy people don't come on this call. Certainly lazy people don't talk on this call. So this is an extraordinarily special group that actually even shows up on the call.
My mother has been my difficult relationship forever. And what I realize is, it's like I have to keep praying the resentment thing and stuff. And I keep coming up with new things with her. And in praying the resentment prayer, I realize, and I've kind of known this, but it's very clear to me now. I don't have a resentment with her. I really don't. She's a narcissist, and she's an alcoholic, a menaholic, and a busyaholic. And she's
busy.
Yes. And she 200% wanted to give everything to having a good family, but she was completely incapable, as my dad was. But even in her adulthood, because of her narcissism, my experience has been rejection, rejection, rejection. And rejection is an individual, because we're very different in our temperament and personality. And so it's not, so resentment gone. And now I sit with.
You say the resentment is gone.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
but
now
what you have is a memory of, and maybe a sadness about, or some feeling, because you're bringing it up. What's the point here?
I am sitting with, on a regular basis, I guess I'm bringing in grief, because what I believe sometimes the answer, I guess what I'm coming to is that what I need is to grieve.
Yeah.
Because I've never had a mother. And I told you about the book, Will I Ever Be Good Enough, for daughters of narcissistic mothers. And
right.
you always doubt yourself, and you always feel like you're not enough. It's like, that's me. And I've held on to this, I've held on to a shield of anger, and it's not like me to not follow the directions of the program. And I have felt like, and sponsors have challenged me, like, come on, Renee, and and I know that it hasn't felt like it's, anyway, it doesn't matter. And
you might want to do the third and fourth column using the word grief rather than resentment.
Okay. And that would look like, when
Just
eat them-
substitute the word and see what happens. I've had people use different words like sadness or regret or remorse, and some have used the word grief, and they've had a productive experience with it. It's not my personal experience, but I'm relating to you other people's personal experiences.
Okay. Okay. I mean, this is a woman who, when I was born, was out doing the PTA, and she didn't even have a kid that was that old.
Yeah.
And yet didn't teach us all the things you need to be taught in life.
Yeah.
You know, the thrill.
Sounds like you still have a little resentment, but
I perceive it as hurt.
oh, that's a good word too. Rather than grief, I would actually refer you to that word. That's a much better concrete word, hurt, and third and fourth column.
Right. And because it feels to me like hurt. It's like, mommy, or mom, it's throughout my whole, how come those things are more important?
Use the term mommy. I think you're going to have I'd be very interested to what happens when you do this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll keep you posted with the mosted.
Yeah, no, because I love the creative, stepping outside the vocabulary in the box to kind of use these tools in a creative way, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I believe it's a biological, I talk about this with my children versus my stepchildren.
Yes.
There's a biological thing where we take care of our own. Yeah. And isn't there a biological thing in children to be taken care of?
Yes. Yes, and of course. Yes.
I didn't get that.
Yep. No, that's the nature of narcissism. That's correct.
And so there's something, and especially with a mother and a daughter.
Yeah.
And a mom, either with a son or a daughter. And okay, good. Right. Thank you. I just wanted to bring it up. And
yep. No, I love the creativity. Step outside the box and explore. There's no downside to it.
Right. And the truth is that I do feel that there also needs to be just grieving that I didn't have her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And okay. Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to run it by and okay. Thanks.
Thanks very much.
So I did the Enneagram last year, right before we started this workshop, because my ex-fiance asked me to. And if I did it now after the workshop is over, would you think it would be different?
That'd be a very interesting experience. I don't know. It will be different only in the sense of a broader, deeper, more awareness. But will it have changed your dominance? I doubt it. Okay. And thank you for raising it that way, because I need to make this comment. All of us have all three, of course, because we have head, heart, and gut. But some of us are dominant in one area over the other. But all three of these ways of perceiving are ways that everybody perceives, but each one of us has a dominant way. So I'd be surprised if the dominant way changes, but I'd be very interested to hear your evaluation if, in fact, you put some additional work into that.
So I came out as number 2, the helper. And it's interesting. I spent 3 weeks with my son-in-law and daughter last week helping them. And I'm a helper. I love to help. I love to help my kids. I work really hard. And my son-in-law was like, why can't you relax? Well, I was really upset. So I come home. I don't know why I read the Enneagram. I guess I wanted to read it because you were going to talk about it. And the helper likes to help. But the other side of it is I have to take care of myself. So
that's the healthy part.
Yes.
Yes.
And that was worth doing the Enneagram.
Yes.
That was worth to know, my son-in-law was right. Why can't you relax? And so I'm going to write him a letter and thank him, because it really stirred me up. I was really upset.
Yeah.
And
the problem with each one of us, whatever our dominant is, we take it to excess because, of course, our addiction orientation, right?
Well, I'm going to take taking care of myself to excess.
You could, but I doubt it. With the consciousness that you have now, it's nice to think that thought, but you'll balance it out. I'm pretty confident.
I have to balance, but no, it will be very hard to sit back and not do. So anyway, I like the idea of the shadow self. That makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, thank you for clarifying getting on your knees, because I don't do that, and I've been wanting to ask you for a few weeks about that. So it's not to get God's attention, but to get my attention. Take that another couple sentences.
Well, does God really care whether we're sitting on our butt, standing on our feet, laying on our bed? Who cares? God doesn't care. God's unconditional love, and it doesn't have any opinion other than just loving us unconditionally. So why do we even pray?
I prayed because I want to talk to him.
That's exactly right. I pray because I want to express myself. It's more for my benefit than it is God. If there is this God, God is intuitive and knows everything anyway.
Mm-hmm. So by getting on my knees.
It's just a symbol, a ritual.
Okay.
It's a human ritual to make yourself a little bit more conscious and maybe a little bit more humble.
Okay, I could use humble.
Yeah. You probably don't need any humility.
I don't even know what the word means.
Yeah, right. Well, one of my favorite definitions comes from Teresa of Avila. She's a mystic from the 16th century. And she said, humility is truth.
Mm.
Yeah, it's seeing reality as it is.
Yeah, but what if you don't know what reality is?
Well, we don't, in fact. That's the truth. We cannot see reality as it is. We can only see reality as we are, because we're looking through our lenses, and everything we perceive has been processed by our brains and our memories and all of everything else. No, we can never know reality.
That's why it's so hard to get along with the human race. Because do you agree with that?
Yeah, because what?
Because I perceive it a certain way, and I think you should perceive it that way.
On the money, right? And that was the benefit of the Enneagram to me. You see it differently than I see it, although we're probably closer because I'm a 3 and you're a 2. So we're probably processing reality fairly closely, but there's no way I can relate to the 1.
Mm-hmm. Right.
In terms of a perception of reality, I can understand it, but there's no way I perceive it in the same way from the head, because I come from a different place in my whole being. Now, a person who is conscious and has done this work has balance. So we have all 3 of them functioning in wonderful integration, hopefully, or holistically, supporting and balance one another.
So I've changed a lot. The behavior hasn't changed yet, but I like the way you explained it. And when you talked about our prayer will make you conscious of your behavior, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Because I love to pray, and not in touch with this behavior stuff.
Yeah.
Because I'm so impulsive.
Yeah.
So that gives me a lot of hope. Thank you.
Now, I wanted to go back and talk a little bit about the conversation we had on prayer.
Yeah.
And specifically on the kneeling part.
Yeah. Yes.
That's something I struggle with, because I've tried it. I grew up
being on your knees, you're saying?
Yeah, I that's how I was taught to pray growing up, right?
Of course.
And somewhere, I cannot identify specifically when, but I stopped doing that.
And so what?
And well, the so what is that everybody says, I shouldn't say everybody. Many people suggest strongly that that's the way you should pray.
Yes.
And it really, I'm just going to be straight honest with you. It at times it distracts me to the point I can't get comfortable.
I haven't been on my knees in 20 years.
Okay.
All right. Let's just really get clear. Back in the day, 1988, I followed those directions. He said, get on your knees. I got on my knees. But like you, I've got a bad back and whatever else. And yeah, it's a distraction for me. Now, in fact, I just remembered probably about 4 days ago, I did get on my knees after having a conversation just like this to, in fact, do it for no other reason, just to do it, to kind of like, but I didn't like it. It didn't. I sit in a lazy boy chair and I have the best meditations.
Well, see, that's what I sit in the chair as well, and I get really quiet. I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
My body relaxed. I can stay that way for a lot longer than I can on my knees, not because they hurt, not because my back hurts.
Yeah.
Something in my head, I'll have to say.
No,
and it's like, oh,
you've heard me more than once say, do what you will do what you can do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about today. So
Right.
As I was sitting here, my stomach felt and I just felt really quite anxious. And what was coming up was when you said, well, am I willing to give away my character defects? And I thought, well, a bit of it is, I don't know, I don't know how to. Then I'd say, yes, you do. It's about making the decision and just praying until it goes away. But there was a thing about, who am I without my character defects?
Well, that's a really potent question. Yeah. Yeah. What's your answer?
I think I've come to this place before, but there's a sort of as I've watched, a lot of my character defects I've been working on for years, and I've settled down and more positive, more helpful, less self-obsessed. But there is a deep, deep thing in me that thinks, well, who am I if all this goes away? Like, who am I?
Yep.
There's a kind of, it's a very deep experience or feeling. It's not on the surface. It's like, where am I in the great unknown?
Yeah.
And if this goes away, who am I there? I'm not explaining it properly.
Yes,
but
you are. Oh my God. You are, you're down in the marrow of the bones in your explanation. It's wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. No, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling your explanation dig down deep into my own. Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah. So I still sit with that herb, that.
Yep. And it might be healthy for you to revisit steps 2 and 3.
Okay.
Well, what is it that you believe about this God of yours?
I think that probably gets down to my step 1s,
Maybe, yeah, but certainly steps 2 and 3 would be a wonderful, healthy visit for you in light of the questions that you've just asked, which are very powerful questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Don't answer them. Don't answer them right now. Hold those questions in prayer and see what gifts you're given in terms of awareness and insight.
Okay.
I sort of feel like we spent so much time on step 4 and step 1, and then last week we're talking about step 5, and then yesterday just so quickly through step 6 and 7,
Yes,
and
look fast, and we'll be talking about 8 and 9 before you know it. We'll be done with the first 9 steps in terms of talking about it. It's a crucial step, but it's kind of like, okay, I have character defects and I'm powerless and prayer is the only answer, and let's move on.
right. Yeah, so there's not much really. Yeah, I just found
there's no analysis, there's no understanding, there's no reading, there's the acceptance that I'm powerless and that I need to pray. And I've added the component, I need to be accountable, because I think that's the thing that brought me across the goal line with regard to step 6 and 7.
What all of these defects result in, which has been an ongoing problem for me in my life, and it's a problem that having done the steps a couple of times, it's certainly decreased, but it hasn't gone away. And every now and then it comes up, and it really, it really interferes with my life. And I'll read the character defects, and then I'll tell you what the thing is. So my character defects: impatience, dissatisfaction, trying to improve others, self-centeredness, feeling unappreciated, feeling less than, careless, mindlessness, and rushing through my life, avoiding my life. And the way that kind of comes up, which has been affecting me, is that I have a harsh manner.
A harsh what?
Manner.
Manner?
You know, like I'm curt, I'm short, I can be rude.
Yeah.
And I want to be kind and courteous and compassionate. But yeah, I'm not that. And I have tried to remove it. Well, you know, I know it's not down to me to remove, but it's just been sitting there for a while. I've been doing my thing.
There's the hand in glove that is kind of the mystery here, that you do have a responsibility for change. You just can't create the change. So we have a partnership with the Spirit that I'm open to and praying for, and I want to be conscious of my behavior so I can attempt to begin to influence my behavior. That's why I love the word influence with the serenity prayer.
Yeah, and I mean, I have influenced my behavior, and I've certainly curtailed that. But I thought it's, you know, like, for you to be able to say that your character defect is gone is amazing. Yeah. Because my defect is certainly lingering.
Yeah.
And it, you know, like, if I don't look after myself and my spiritual life, and I don't practice my practice, exactly, it's just right there underneath, waiting to come out and snap and create problems for me.
So that's the image. That's the image, that it lays underneath in waiting, and it doesn't take much to remove the cover, and I'm that nasty self again. Yep. Yep. And so this is why I believe the prayer specifically for the specific change. I'm not telling God what to do, but when I'm praying it specifically, I'm telling me what I need to have in my consciousness. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I certainly could take that on and be more. And I liked what you said about being accountable to somebody else as well with regard to it. And I can certainly do that.
That's the part that put it over the goal line, is the accountability thing. The rest is just pie in the sky. Oh yeah, I can pray all I want, but when I'm talking to somebody else, it becomes real. And maybe it's my own pride that doesn't want to show failure to this person on a consecutive basis over a long period of time. So as long as I stay accountable, I am going to change, because I'm embarrassed not to.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's everything at the moment. Thank you, Herb.
No, that's a lot. Thank you so much. So let's pray to close our meeting today. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Thanks, everybody. Again,